Welcome to our third panel discussion, GameFi and NFTs, driving blockchain mass adoption. This panel is hosted by Robert Kopandi, social media expert at Entity and enthusiastic supporter of blockchain technology. Some of you might recognize his voice, as Robert was the main moderator of our Project Dialogue series on Twitter. Robert, we're looking forward to your questions to our amazing panel. The stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, David. And hello, everyone. As David said, if you've been closely following the project dialogues, then you might have heard my voice over the past 3 or 4 months. And it's great to be in front of everyone once again. And I would like to welcome my illustrious panel of guests. It's great to have you once again. I know we've had a conversation before on Twitter Spaces, but now we get to a more face-to-face interaction, so to say. So it was great to have each and one of you on our previous conversations, and I'm confident that today's discussion will be very equally stimulating, if not more so. So, as we all know, our focus for this panel today is one of blockchain's most promising frontiers, and it's the GameFi and NFTs section where the world of gaming, finance, and digital ownership are converging and promise a radical reimagination of economic models and the way we interact with digital assets. So with us today, we have an esteemed panel of leading builders within the MultiversX ecosystem who are helping in pioneering the gaming revolution. So joining me today, or us, better said, is Lucas from Knights of Cathena, Katalin from Vampire Wars, Joshua from Nojin, Dolian from Aquaverse, and Halil from Cyberpunk City. So you guys are not only here because of your innovative projects, but also because you're visionaries in the ecosystem, pushing the GameFi and NFT scene to the next level and helping push us towards actual true mass adoption. So without further ado, welcome, first of all. I want to hear you guys as well.
Thanks,
Hello,
Rob.
Joshua.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, now I realize my video is not working. So am I visible? Just a quick question.
You are invisible.
No.
I'm invisible.
No.
Well, that is not how it's intended. So that's
Visibilize yourself.
We can all hear. We can all hear you though, Robert. I think that's the most important part. But if you can fix it,
okay. Well, so
let's get started anyway. Let's get started anyway.
So one of the barriers within the blockchain ecosystem and the GameFi space comparative to traditional games is that traditional games, it's just a straight up purchase of a game, and you are you can jump straight into this imaginary world and interact with a character's storyline and immerse yourself within this experience. So what barriers of entry still exists for casual gamers and non-crypto users when it comes to participating in a GameFi and NFT ecosystem? And how can this be addressed? Is it more of a mental barrier, or is it more of like a software? Like it's too complicated, processes need to be simplified. What is your take, guys?
I can start if you want, guys.
Yes, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, the blockchain is still, and NFT and crypto is still a technology, and I think we have to implement some mechanism coming from the blockchain that is claiming for transparency, for ownership, and for justice in video games. That should be the first step to be concrete. For example, in the digital version of the games, if you buy it on Steam, on the Microsoft Store or whatever, you can't sell it after that. But if this game is an NFT, you can sell it after that. And also all the in-app buyings you can do in the games, like in Fortnite or whatever. Those assets can be sold after that, and the people who will play on these casual games will have a feeling of ownership. And I think that's the first step we have to do. And I think that some of the big studios in the video game industry are thinking about that. And then the people will understand that NFT can be really, really important, can be really, really beautiful. Nice, we see you.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think that can be the first step. So gamers can be friendly with crypto and the NFT and all that, and then we will be able to explore all the mechanism that the blockchain can give us in the gaming industry, I think.
If I might add my 2 cents on that, if it's okay.
Of course.
I think from that perspective, we need to even go a little bit more before we start a little one step before that, because from what we see from a traditional gamer space right now is that they are not interested in ownership and stuff like that, or NFTs, and they do not want to own anything unless they are, let's say, pretty much thrown into it. So what we need to do from a gamer's perspective to get the users in touch, we need to create the same experiences we already have and add the Web3 components, like you mentioned, transparency, ownership, and stuff like that on top. So from my perspective, the problem with the majority of people is that they actually do not know what they want. Because right now, if you say to a player, you can earn something or can sell something from a game, it's all about the earning stuff. And mostly if people playing a game, it's like they just want to be entertained. And this should be the main focus, to have them onboarded. And at some point, once they are in an ecosystem and they are playing a game, they are entertained, they realize, wait a second, I can sell my stuff and I can maybe get a pizza from the earnings I had in game for some hours of playing. And this is the step where we need to make to show the people that this actually not, let's say, infects the actual gaming experience. So people love their games, they need to have their games like they already have, or even a better experience. But the main focus should lay on the game before having the earning arguments coming up, from my perspective.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in there. You know, I don't disagree with anything Lucas said, but I think one day people will be really enthralled by that blockchain element. Certainly, I don't think we're super close to that quite yet, but maybe before we get to that stage, there has to be a lot of infrastructure in place to make Web3 gaming not feel so Web3-y, you know. I think certain things like onboarding, logging into the game, or buying a skin, selling it, the infrastructure just isn't there yet. I mean, blockchain is an incredibly complex thing. Even trying to figure out who sent something to who, it's still something that feels very dev-like and not very childlike. So maybe when there's a lot more interface, I do think UX UI is the big vehicle to reaching that solution there. So probably when we make a lot more gains, you know, you hear the cliche like hiding the complexity of blockchain. I think that's even more relevant in gaming, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with Joshua. It's really hard, complex onboarding the Web2 gamers into Web3 games, because they don't want to create new wallets or just go to website wallet, for example, MultiversX.com, and create. There are multiple ways to create a wallet, so it's a little bit confusing for them. So, but nowadays we are getting new tools to onboarding to new people for the entire ecosystem. Like now we have X Portal app, and it allows us to integrate Wallet Connect feature into our games, and it really helps to get on board for the non-crypto users. It's a gateway to bring them in our games or metaverses. etc. With that way, they don't need to know about their private keys, because its portal app have, of course, they will need to save them, but there is a future encrypted private key stored on their clouds. So it's a better step to onboard them. So yeah, it's a good way.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees that onboarding is the key, and it brings a lot of challenges. So this wallet connection and moving to third-party applications and techie stuff to create something, then you go to the game and play it. It needs to go away and needs to be solved somehow. And it's a technical thing. So players don't need to know the technicalities. It needs to be abstract in terms of usage, and not only for onboarding, or also for retention, for example. Yeah, because with the blockchain interaction during the game, you might have some game mechanics where you need to put, like, I don't know, signing transactions, authorizing payments and stuff like this. And this is very delicate. So gamers, I think, are skeptical to Wallet Connect first. And then I don't think that they don't understand ownership of assets, because I don't think it's been talked about enough. So we need to talk about it more and explain it. And this ownership of assets and the centralization of trading assets and freely moving assets from one account to another, something that now is not possible. So I cannot transfer my gems in, I don't know, Clash of Clans to Joshua, for example, because I cannot do that. Yeah. And this brings another thing into the equation. It's that games need to adapt the in-game mechanics and economy to overcome these challenges. Yeah, when you have players like going together on one account to earn more, to do more, and stuff like this, this brings another challenges and more complexity. So solving this complexity will help Web3 games to onboard traditional gamers who are now, maybe 2 years ago, they were like, oh no, blockchain is a scam, crypto is a scam, we don't want that, and so on. But now I don't think it's that. And we have regulation coming in, and that will go away easily. But the Wallet Connect, the technicalities that are in their face will remain an issue. And this is a barrier, yeah.
I also think it's one of the sort of like barriers is like it gives so much responsibility to a gamer in itself, because at the end of the day, he becomes sort of like an investor, since we're dealing with assets in a game. So there has to be a gamification process of teaching these newcomers to the blockchain that how to deal with these assets and how to deal, I mean, protect yourself in the different situations. So I think it's off-putting for some people to kind of come into a game and then have like this responsibility of okay, why do you manage your own assets, and which he never had to do when dealing with a traditional game. So
sure,
that is.
But sorry, Robert, if you allow me, we have banking and other industries that are trying to use gamification tactics to their products to I don't know, to engage with consumers and stuff like that, while games have that intrinsically. So games have it. So all that needs to be done is to I don't know, embed this complexity of asset management and stuff like this, and use a language and use the lore or the game concept or the game interface to make these things pretty, you know, because gamers want to grind, they want to grow, they want to dominate, to beat the game, and so on. And as long as we stick to that, yeah, is more than the best we can do. Yeah.
Robert, I also don't think that gamers like IQ is not enough, or it's not enough to handle blockchain. You know, if you look at some of the really complex games and all the social elements behind them, there's some really complicated stuff that They teach themselves. They make informational things that are easier to digest, to kind of spread out to the community. And so I think I hate to kind of jump topics here, but I think incentives are super important. If the incentives are there for gamers, games are no longer being played only for fun. They're being played for something much more. And so you get a much more serious, a much more engaged participant in Web3. I mean, blockchain gaming is prime for something more serious than traditional computer gaming. So I think that's something interesting to see. They'll teach themselves if the incentives are aligned enough.
I agree, but here I think it's it depends a lot of the target audience, because if you have a project and you have a business behind it and you want to attract this business. Right now in traditional gaming, gamers are consumers. They are clients. They come by, they leave, they come by again, and so on. We talk about through ownership. It's different. Yeah, they can they do more than games. And yes, I agree. Gameplay can be more complicated, and it's not an issue of IQ. I didn't want to make it sound like that, but it's still a dose of skepticism. I think this needs to be overcome, because I think that we need to show that exactly that is not that complicated, and it doesn't interfere with rewards and the reward systems and mechanics and fun and entertainment, engagement, and so on. Right now, I think these are separated. I think gamers look at it, oh, it's blockchain, and there is a gap. Instantly, it's a gap. And education, I don't know, more talking about it and so on, because this is how I see it. It's just my opinion. So it's not about complexity or that they don't figure it out. It's just that maybe in Web3, all protocols and all projects are throwing tech in the face of everyone right now. This is how it seems from my perspective, at least.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agreed on that. So it kind of seems like everybody is, and I try to formulate it a little bit provocative, everybody is proud that we're in the Web3 space and we're using blockchain and we know how things work and stuff like that. But from a consumer's perspective, from a player's perspective, a blockchain should never really mentioned at all in a gaming project, because it's still nothing else than a data layer. Yeah, you have data stored and users are trying to access it at some point. Of course, there are assets on the blockchain which are a little bit more advanced data, so to say, but in the end, it's like a database. So, and from a gamer's perspective, the intention for hopping on a game is to be entertained, at least for now, at least in that kind of thing. And the more tech you throw into even the export lab, which is not that perfect for onboarding onboarding gamers right now, at that point at least, because what does a gamer's login process look like? For now, you have gamers that are used to logging in with their Google account, which they already have, because everybody has a Google account, and that's basically it. Beside the app, of course, Apple, Facebook, email logins and stuff like that. And if you take another complexity, and the export lab is comparing to a Google account, is more complex than that. And why should you, from a traditional gamer's perspective, why should I use another app to log into another app? So this makes no sense from a traditional gamer's perspective at this stage of the market, at least from my point of view. And that's why we need to have this, let's say, cover process still, where the users just log in with their social accounts, the Web2 authentication layer, creating the wallet behind the scenes, and doing everything that is blockchain related with our tech behind the scenes, not in any phase thrown of the players. So as I usually say, in a best case scenario, a user should not realize that he is playing a Web3 game, in my opinion.
I respect that, your opinion.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
I think we can all agree. Before jumping on to the next question, I would like to remind the community that the lottery draw ticket will be closing in 55 minutes. So make sure you claim your ticket, because there's a big treasure chest full of goodies that we'll be giving out in a short bit. So with that said, Joshua, you actually touched on one of the questions that I'm leading into is about the incentives of Web3 games, as it's one of the things that draws users in. Of course, as we've seen so far, a lot of games have used huge incentives, which was kind of a drawback at a later date, as users came in, piled in, and kind of sucked the liquidity out of the ecosystem. And what kind of specific features or incentives should Web3 games incorporate to entice non-crypto users to participate and ultimately stay on chain?
This might not be like a direct good answer for that question, but I think interoperability is the big sell. Like, you know, there are other incentives, there are rewards, there are loot boxes and things like that. But if you don't have interoperability between metaverses and between games, you're just making a regular game with extra steps. This is my belief. You really need interoperability, and that means you need underlying infrastructure and foundational layers that can ping and communicate all these things, balance them in the games that they're porting into. Big challenges. Those are huge challenges still, I think, left to be solved.
I see.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. In a perspective of blockchain builders, we want to have interoperability, and also we can travel from a metaverse to another. We want to make collabs. We want to make a whole universe you can dive in. But I think at one moment we will have some big actors that will come in the good moments, because I think we are really early, and you will have a big meta that is coming with a world like Ready Player One, if you saw it, or something like that, and you can jump in and you have everything in it. It will be closed. I think this scenario is also possible, but I think that little steps in the gaming industry will be done. Like I said, for example, selling a game, a digital game you played with, you will be confident with blockchain. But when we talk about AR, VR, etc., we think about a metaverse, and I think that blockchain will be having a really great role in it. But I think we didn't found yet the good formula to speak to everybody. I think it's too early yet. We have to discuss on it. I don't know if you have ideas, but to be honest, I don't have yet the scenario that will be leading people to the metaverse with us. Because we have great things to do also in the metaverse. We are talking about gaming, but there is also education, which is the same in the future, I think. So yeah, there is great thing to say. I'm just dropping that.
I think it's competition. I think sport at the, you know, maybe one layer up from competition being the foundational layer. Sport is what brings everyone out into the world to socialize with one another with stakes on the line. And the more sports and competitions can be baked into metaverses, that's what's going to draw the users to kind of hang out there. That's how Steam also built up their huge following, their huge user bases. They had one or two really good games in the beginning. They drew everyone to like this oasis in the middle. Then they started to do this third-party integration with other gaming developers to change their business model that way.
Agree with that. Lucas, I'm curious about your opinion about the incentives and features that would entice users to stay on let's say Knights of Katina, because you mentioned that the main focus is on being an actual enjoyable and a game that can be repeatedly played over and over again. So I'm curious about your perspective on this subject.
Yeah, basically, it is probably a little bit boring what I can say. From my perspective, the most important thing to keep the users engaged is to build an actual game that is entertaining. In every scenario where you targeting the gaming audience, you have to have a game that is working like a game and feels like a game, especially with the crypto rewards integrated and the NFTs. You have to treat NFTs like NFTs are, let's say, built in Web2 games already. If you look at World of Warcraft, for example, there's a huge item economy that would be predestined to be parted to the Web3 space. You have a currency, you have items, you have non-fungible tokens so far, and this could all be used in a Web3 game without a player even noticing that it's on a blockchain, so to say. And to actually keep the players hooked, there is obviously the user experience and the gameplay experience, but then you have to have a token ecosystem that is scalable to an, let's say, increasing amount of numbers, which we saw that ecosystems or economies had problems in the past with. For example, talking about X Infinity, where you have high inflation or inflation death spiral, so to say, resulting in a huge selling pressure of the token. These are concepts that needs to be taken and improved. And of course, it is a little bit more complicated to implement something like that, but that's the actual way to go. For example, the currency used in game should be treated like a premium currency used on Web2 games. For example, if you have, actually, I'm not a Candy Crush player, but I guess there is some kind of premium currency which someone can buy for fiat. And basically, this is like a token should be used in a game that is targeting the actual traditional gaming space and to keep them engaged. And this is where the actual value comes from, because at that point, if you have a deflationary token system that is growing with an increasing amount of player, then you have actual value, and then you can educate the players in the ecosystem and show them that, okay, you have right now, you have played, let's say, 2 hours of Knights of Cathena and you have earned $1. And this is basically how you can give the people a feeling that it's not kind of witchcraft or scam or something like that, if it feels like a game similar to the Web2. So this is what I can contribute to it.
Definitely. I mean, as we've seen, even at the beginning of the GameFi rave, it was in the previous bull market, is when Axie Infinity jumped onto the scene, and as well with it, a whole nation, meaning the Philippines, was one of the biggest players of the game, and a lot of people didn't have jobs, but they were playing this Web3 game and were actually making a living and actually be able to buy even a house in certain situations. So yes, of course, the tokenomics have not been the best as we've seen, but it definitely gives us a glimpse of what is truly could be achieved within the space. We just have to find the certain formula, so to say, and the rest will just come by itself, that's for sure. And also, it's I'm curious to see who will be the first big mover within the traditional market. Which company will jump onto this opportunity and bring on the masses, because that will be the catalyst, to sort of say, is when, I don't know, let's say EA launches their first Web3 game. So that will be
but actually there are some kind of pretty much big movers already. If you take Square Enix, for example, who has developed the whole Final Fantasy series, just to name one, who is actually tapping into the Web3 development and focusing on that. Then you have the Epic Games Store, which is now who is now launching Web3 games as well. So the big players are already seeing that the space is nothing yet scammy or something like that. They jumping onto the scene, and if you go 3 or 4 years ago, or was it? Yeah, I guess 3 years ago it was, where Ubisoft and Atari jumped on the field already, which are also big players. Of course, they had some kind of shitstorms to take, because they tinkered around too early, for example. But I guess if I'm not mistaken, even Blizzard at some point try to get a patent on blockchain gaming, which is a signal that they are already elaborating or exploring the field. So the big movers are already into that or exploring behind the scenes, but they need to be, and this is probably why it's not on the main focus or the main communication. They need to be very careful because the traditional gaming space, once you say the name NFT too early, you will get a shitstorm and probably lose half of your user base. So the most interesting thing I saw was that the Pokemon company actually launched job offerings for Web3 and blockchain developers. So this is all happening behind the scenes and not too much in the mainstream media, but they are already joining the Web3 space, and this is pretty much of a good sign.
And you have also a recent partnership between Nike and EA, I think, to make assets.
Yeah.
And those assets are the first step for the metaverse, I think, in the future. That's clearly their vision. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And as you said, I mean, there might be also a retention, sort of like jumping into this scene, so to say, for traditional companies, since there's so much stigma that has been generated over the past 2 years around games that it's not the best, and if they fail as well, then it could really affect their business in general. So there has to be a confident first mover, and I think it's just around the corner, to be honest, because it's just a way too big of an opportunity for any company to miss out on.
So, I agree, Robert, but it's also a very different business model for them.
Definitely.
Yeah, so
100%.
very huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I'm actually think that the Web3 space will be driven firstly by indie game studios, because from an indie games perspective, you have way new opportunities of creating a business model. For example, in Knights of Athena, our business model is based on a token ecosystem that is absolutely self-sustaining and is only driven by, let's say, the player activity in the ecosystem. So we do not need at some point rely on fiat injections of the ecosystem, which is a total new way of thinking. If you see a Web2 game, for example, where the usual approach is, even for a free-to-play game, you were selling skins or something like that, and you have that, and then you always grab into the pockets of the users, which properly set in a Web3 game, it's not really necessary if you set up the ecosystem right. Of course, you have some kind of a lift-off, but at some kind of a tipping point, the token ecosystem should be able to be self-sustaining and not reliable on any injections from outside. And this is a huge opportunity for indie game developers, because there are not that much users needed. Let's say in comparison, we do not, let's say World of Warcraft has 50 million daily active users or something like that. And in a Web3 space, it could be that 100,000 daily active users are enough to drive a gaming studio in a way that it can survive and to can grow a company on. So, and from a Web2 perspective, you already have from a bigger Web2 company's perspective, you already have the community. You only need to do the marketing, sell skins and stuff like that. It's very easy if you are an established company. And why should you change your business model if the old one still works? So there needs to be some kind of an indie game start where the bigger companies see that this is an actual revenue that could outperform the old business model, and then the bigger ones will probably come join the space, in my perspective.
I also think there's like this feeling of inevitability that blockchain gaming is going to happen. I mean, metaverses, Ready Player One is going to happen. So these really big teams with, you know, north of $20 billion in budget, they can sort of sit back and wait for, unfortunately, we might be guinea pigs in all of this, right? We're showing them how to operate a community, how to structure tokenomics, how to make the incentives align, because another element of all of this is that traditional companies have an extremely difficult time breaking into Web3. That's why, you know, Pokemon, Lucas, to your point, they made a job opening specifically for head of Web3, is because this is something that the gaming industry, that entertainment and technology have never seen before. The stakes are so high, people actually lose money, and then you know, people who buy the top on something, they become your nemesis for the next however many years. And so there is a lot of treading cautiously right now by the big teams.
One thing that has occurred to me, and it's like a question that popped into my mind, is could story-driven games on-chain be a success, since what we currently see relies on player-to-player interaction to create a digital financial market, and for it to actually have like a system that keeps it up, so to say. So like a simple, I don't know, let's say The Last of Us type of game, does it have a place on-chain? What do you guys think?
Actually, from a use case perspective, I don't see a single player game that is story driven necessarily be on-chain. So it just makes no sense if you talk about Web3, where we have decentralization and ownership and value at some point, versus I want to get a story to be told at some point. So where is the value coming from a single player perspective? I'm not saying that there's not an option to do it, but from that point on, I guess the multiplayer ecosystem and item ecosystem approach makes way more sense as a starting use case. And once we have, let's say, business models running on that and have shown that this is a thing, there will come some kind of single player approaches that might use Web3 as well. But I guess it might take a little longer to have an actual game development approach to build a story-driven single-player game on the Web3 space.
Yeah,
You might be able to have a successful text-based game that may not be particularly single player. I'm in agreement that I think just one person going through a story text-based is going to be pretty challenging for that to really kick off in Web3. But what if you had, like, I don't know, like Settlers of Catan on something like this? I think this is similar to what Vampire Wars is attempting to put together, right? So I think those type of things could succeed. Anything that drives competition and mixed with enough cooperation, you know, those are all primed to do well in either Web 2 or Web 3.
for me, it can be crazy, but in 10 years, maybe with quantum computing, maybe in all the metaverse, we will be able to have some AI PNG turning to real people in the world. For example, if we take our domain in Aquaverse, if we take Atlantis, for example, then you dive into Atlantis, you can have some AI PNGs which is talking to you, which is you with you have some quest, etc. But also maybe having some multiplayer mode or multiplayer zone in which you can switch from the story to the adventure, maybe in this metaverse with the VR helmet, etc. Maybe it can be something really crazy, but we need high computing force. So maybe the quantum computing will enable us to do that in 10 years or something like that. Maybe we'll have some mix, some crazy mix also. That's an idea that I have of the metaverse. I don't know if it's possible, but we are always surprised about technology and what we can do with it.
Sure, but there are so many people with access to technology, so we can start with people collaborating and playing together for shared incentives, for creating new storylines and such. And this is actually the core mechanics in Vampire Wars, for example, where if there wouldn't be like clans mechanics, alliances, politics involves being a territory domination game where the territories, the map is the actual world with real cities and everything. It's everything. Some things are synced. This gives a sense of I don't know how to call it, a sense of so if we discuss about ownership in the language between players in their discords and so on, they use like real city names and stuff like that. Of course, if we bring a layer of artificial intelligence, I don't know, enemies or nemesis or so on, then it needs to be slowly introduced with very limited influence in the mechanics, because real time economy of a strategy game in our case can be easily unbalanced with this. So players need to take responsibility for the way they go into the game and the way they decide together to move to new country, new territory, to battle each other and so on. Yeah, because it's linked to the tokenomics, it's linked with the game economy, it's linked with everything. So they know they are together. So if they fuck up, they know from the beginning because they took that into consideration. Yeah.
And also, in my opinion, the single player and multiplayer games should be existed in one place, and it's called Metaverse. In Metaverse, you can drive your car and you don't have to stick with anyone. You just drive, or like, let's say, a spaceship, or if it's an historical game, you can drive your horse and try to kill some mobs in the map. So I don't think that it's necessary to create a single player game based on Web3. So in my opinion, yeah, it doesn't make much sense. There are some examples on the other blockchains. They just newly launched, but the only thing that we can use Web3 on single player games, it could be like equity shares or something. Otherwise, it doesn't make much sense, in my opinion.
Awesome. That's a interesting round of opinions you guys had here. It was really nice. So speaking of metaverses, since we are all on the subject as well, is of course the stigma revolves around the metaverse. That is something that requires hardware to be integrated into the metaverse. So speaking of virtual headsets or even augmented reality technologies, especially considering now that we've seen the Apple headset coming onto the market, is do these headsets are necessary to be a part of the metaverse? Could they impact the mass adoption of the technology in itself?
Guys, I'm a little bit skeptical on this, on the short, medium term. So we need to see how how Apple will do with Vision Pro in terms of mass adoption, of course. I believe there might be some marginal boost on adoption for Web3 with this merge between augmented or virtual reality and Web3 gaming or any other project. But I think that only test and some piloting of this, I'm not sure about the technical barriers that we have right now with hardware that is needed and so on. So if you cannot keep like 1 million players in the same room, yeah, it's early adoption, not mass adoption. This is my opinion.
In my opinion, the AR and VR technology is inevitable for the metaverse being existent, because it allows us to be inside of something that we can almost feel. But we should also consider about that AR and VR can create immersive experiences, and it's important to note that it's not crucial at this stage. We're still not there yet. We still need some adoption while we are creating visually appealing and quality gameplays with our games or metaverses. This is the first step we should consider. Then we can integrate any kind of technologies. But first, the crucial part is our metaverse, quality of the metaverses and the games.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Ready Player One, this is like the example that gets pulled over and over again when we have imagination about the metaverse. And for sure, you need the hardware, and Halil's right. You know, it's an inevitability that it's going to be here and be a part of metaverse. But when you think about the gap between where we are today and Ready Player One, there's a lot of chapters that we still need to work through as a species, as humans. So yeah, the hardware is great. I mean, as a quick aside, you know, maybe not totally metaverse related, but think about like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! With the AR VR technology. You have a giant Charizard in front of you battling, or you have a giant dark magician sending his attack in your living room, maybe, or they can transform. Maybe you and your friends decide to meet up on the football pitch or a basketball gym, and it transforms using AR, the physical reality, into something much more beautiful and compelling. So yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's inevitable, but it's just a vehicle for much more cool things to be developed.
Yeah, it's really quite exciting. I would love to see that in the future, but at the same time, I'm really skeptical about the hardware, because of we are talking about ecological problems, environmental problem, and I mean that we have some limit of resource, and we will be needing a new device that will need a lot of I don't know how to say it in English, but components, you know, some metals, etc., that is already rare. And we have a vision of the metaverse in which everybody will be in it, and also the hardware can be a helmet, can be a suit, can be something to run and to work in the game. It can be also a chip that you put in your brain, so you can feel everything. So we have a lot of questions on the hardware. Even if I love the progress and I really want to live in the metaverse in the future and feel what it is, I'm a little bit skeptical. I don't know how it will be leaded, and we have to be sure that the impact of the metaverse will be great in terms of education and entertainment also. So it's really blurry for me. I don't know, but I'm how can I say that? I can't wait to see, and I can't wait to find also solution in terms of hardware, in terms of resources we will need. I mean, physical resources. I think there is always a way to produce the resources will be needed, but we have to see with nature how it works and how we can work with nature to have all this. I wanted to say this also because I think we don't talk about it when we talk about metaverse, etc. And now we are talking about hardware, so that's a challenge we'll be having also, I think.
I kind of consider that one of the first, like, true mass adoption, so to say, of the metaverse will come through consoles, actually, because as we've seen, Sony offer one of the best VR headsets within the industry, and it's actually one of the most affordable headsets on the market, and it opens up the opportunity for more people to, of course, get onboarded into this space. But as with everything, first the experience has to be there. There has to be a motive for people to, okay, join this digital world and to have a purpose there, because just roaming around simply is not entertaining, and it doesn't bring value at the end of the day towards the player. So unless we have a compelling universe where it also brings the ethos of the metaverse, as in opportunities to earn, learn, experience different opportunities, given, I mean, not defined by your region or anything, then until then, we can have all the hardware, the cheapest hardware, everyone can have it, but if the experience in itself is subpar, then it's kind of pointless.
Yeah.
So
my 2 cents on that front. Because talking about the metaverse is kind of, I feel kind of difficult at that point, because everybody using the metaverse, the word metaverse in some way, and we do not even know what the metaverse is about. What in my opinion makes no sense is to have some kind of one world where everything's happened. Like even if you look at Ready Player One from a gaming perspective, you have sure it is the example of interoperability between two worlds, from taking your loot from one planet to another or something like that. But even that game is built from one company who has established, like Epic Games with Fortnite, which is not a Web3 game. You have one, if you want to call it universe, that is virtually hosted at some point, not in virtual reality, but as a game, basically, but only being in that in a virtual space where you can run around. That's what you probably meant, Robert, is not doing any favor in anything. And from my perspective, what we need to talk about, we need to have some kind of a 3-layer architecture where we have universes that need to adapt the Web3 part first. And from that point on, we can talk about the metaverse, who is integrating those universes into the world we have, some kind of a meta layer between the real world and the universes. And then at some point you can go beyond, and then you have a multiverse at some point where you connect those different universes over the metaverse and over the real world. And this is actually, at least in my head, I approach that makes way more sense and is even more realistic from a development step point of view, because we were talking about Ready Player One, and as Joshua mentioned, it is far away in the future, of course, but it's kind of like we're talking about running before we have learned to walk. So we need to have the Web3 part in projects or in universes to be set as default, and then we can talk about going beyond, in my opinion, at least.
I get this kind of sense while Lucas was talking, like, what if this is similar to those early conversations that people were having before currency was discovered, right?
Exactly.
Like there's so much labor, there's so much trade, and then they're like, what is the atomic composability of time and labor and effort? And it's like, okay, the metaverse might need composability as well when it comes to assets and effort. Okay, I spent this time, energy, and resource to get this object in this game. Now, in order for that to easily and without all this laborious process to port this over to another universe, another multiverse, maybe the answer will be found in breaking down into its composable pieces, and then it just easily gets vacuumed up into another reality. I'm not sure. It kind of feels kind of eerie and cool to be a part of the conversation, though.
That's an interesting take. And yeah, I mean, as we've seen within the space, anything is possible, and concepts that we couldn't even imagine could appear at any moment in time, because that's the beauty of creativity, is like, you never know who comes up with a strange, novel idea that might not actually working. So even though we might consider certain concepts that impossible, maybe in somebody's head has been resolved in a way. So it's definitely an interesting time to be here and to see the evolution of the space in general, from where we started, like simple stuff, now getting to more complicated and advanced concepts. So we are shortly getting towards the end of this panel. And I would like to give you guys like a minute to, I don't know, give your last word on the future of Web3 gaming. What is your take? What is your outstanding idea that you want to put out there, or maybe address community members or builders alike?
I'll go first. I think that a game should be a game first. So if it delivers entertainment, fun, and stable and predictive rewards mechanisms, yeah, I think it solves the most of the problem. And if the tokenization of some assets, because not all assets are necessary to be tokenized in a game, it's also done in balance with everything else, then Web3 gaming is on. Yeah, this is my take. It shouldn't be complicated. Yeah, for me, it's not that complicated. As a concept, we can discuss philosophy of metaverse and interoperability and so on. But in the pragmatic way, gamers want games to play.
Awesome, thank you.
I also want to take, so I want to say something about, we already are started the first glimpse of our metaverse. So if you guys would like to join and see what we have developed and what's the metaverse in our opinion, you can come and join and see what's there. This is just the first glimpse. In the future, it will be much and better than this one.
Awesome, thank you.
I think metaverses, and I may not be super qualified. I haven't built a metaverse or anything like this. Certainly have thought about it just as much as anybody else. But I think a metaverse is sort of like this symphony where every part of the orchestra has to be performing their part. It's not just one thing or another. All of it has to be there. It has to be compelling. And people have to feel like when they go into this place, what it takes from you is very real, right? They require a very real upfront cost, but yet the reward is very real as well. And so that's about as abstract as I think is a correct answer so far. I'm confident to put that down on the paper, and then everything else is I mean, that's like trying to limit the human creativity. The possibilities are really endless here.
For me, the future of the metaverse and the gaming is clearly about game. That's the shell of the metaverse tomorrow. Then it's about wonder, it's about education, and I think we have a lot to build. We are early. That's super exciting to be builders, and I mean our communities also are builders with us because they're following us and they give ideas and extra. So I think we will be building, waiting until we can really move and change the game industry, I mean, and we will be there also with the big actors if they want our ideas. I think we have a pretty smart people here really to find new ideas, new way to involve people and to make the game more entertained and to go into the metaverse. So I can't wait to see what we will be all building in 5 years. We're going to share maybe another panel like this or a coffee and discuss about all the travel and the journey. So I can't wait, and I hope the best for all of you.
Thank you.
I would say the same to all of you as well. And to add my final 2 cents, everything is said, I guess, from my point of view, just focusing on building games and supplementing them with Web3 part without throwing the tech into users' faces. This would be the formula to success, at least for now, on the current stage of the market.
Awesome. Thank you to each and every one of you for giving your last words on the subject, and hopefully the community enjoying this conversation. And thank you for tuning in to the Web3 and GameFi topic. So
well,
I'll
thanks,
give
Robert.
back the mic back to David.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. We are a little short on time. Thanks, Robert, and thanks to all the amazing panelists here and for the wonderful discussion. We will now jump on another 15-minute coffee break and meet again at 3:30 p.m. UTC with some final announcements on Entity and our event lottery. So as Robert already mentioned, please be aware that the lottery sign-up will be closed very soon at 3:30 p.m. UTC. And as in the last break, we would like to invite you now to check out the expo area, to visit the breakout rooms of our partners. See you there in the next minutes. And at the end of this day, we have a full hour of expo areas for all of you guys. Okay, so see you in 13 minutes now. Take care. Bye-bye.